This year has been a rocky one for Vita fans. It seems like the word of the year is cancelled. We've had a stream of disappointing news, but there has been some good news too. So let's get into the big stories of the year. The first bit of bad news came in February, when Sony announced that the Vita and PS3 would no longer be getting monthly games for PS Plus subscribers, from March 2019 onwards. PS Plus has been hit or miss over the years. Some months we've gotten pretty poor games, but then you can look at December 2018 when we got Iconoclast and Paper Please, which were both excellent. It's definitely a shame to be losing the service. And for me, I find it pretty annoying that I paid for a couple of years of PS Plus when there was an offer on the subscription. March 2019 is going to be an infamous month for the Vita, because in May, Sony announced that they were ending production of physical Vita cards from March 2019 onwards. The Vita has a fan base of dedicated collectors, and Sony was just ending that permanently. Vita cards can only be produced by Sony, so their decision ends any possibility of new physical Vita games or reprints of old ones. This is a bigger problem than just an end to physical games, because it also impacts developers from being able to make enough money to justify making a Vita game. One developer even stated that due to the end of physical cart production, they would not be bringing their next game to Vita, as they wouldn't make their money back from digital sales alone. This decision also impacted another game that I was highly anticipating, Bloodstained. The developers said they were cancelling the Vita version of the game because, and I quote, "The decision is largely due to Sony's plans to discontinue the Vita console, ending production of physical copies and stopping certain online support features." Now, at the time of that announcement, we didn't know that Sony was stopping production of the Vita as well. Maybe the developers of Bloodstained were already aware of that, but there was some misunderstanding in terms of stopping online services, because stopping PS Plus wouldn't have impacted Bloodstained, and stopping physical cart production wouldn't impact the game coming out digitally. Maybe they genuinely misunderstood the situation, or maybe they were looking for a reason to just cancel it because they knew the Vita version would cost more than it would make. I was annoyed and disappointed at the time, but now I'm kind of glad. I had kickstarted the game for way too much money, and I was glad to get a refund. With all the delays and the recent news that they're bringing in the developer way forward to help finish the game, it does seem to indicate there are problems with development. At the very least, we got the 8-bit spin-off game Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, which was really good. We got a couple of new limited run game type companies this year, selling physical Vita games. There's Red Art Games, whose first game they were selling was Bard's Tale. They received a lot of criticisms as they were going to release the game unpatched, which had a bug that prevented players from getting all the trophies. They've since delayed production and will be shipping a patched version of the game, which is excellent news, and glad to see they took customer feedback on board. We also got Strictly Limited Games, who sold their first Vita game in January, 99 Vitas. PlayAsia has been releasing some exclusive Vita physicals, with some very nice collector's editions at decent prices, and limited run games have been going strong, with some excellent games this year, like Salt and Sanctuary, Bastion, Valhalla, and Cosmic Star Heroine, to name just a few. Vita collectors have definitely had a lot to buy, and since cart production is ending, it seems like companies are trying to get as many Vita releases out as possible. It's a shame though to see some mediocre games get physical releases when there are limited carts left for Sony to produce. I don't want to slam any particular game, but there are so many great games that I'd rather have a physical, like SteamWorld Dig 2 or Deadbolt maybe. We did have some good news towards the end of the year for Vita collectors, when NIS announced they would be releasing physical versions of Penny Punching Princess, The Lost Child, and one of my favourite games of the year, The Longest 5 Minutes. These will be out in March 2019. In December we had more physical Vita games announced, the biggest one being Darkest Dungeon from Signature Edition Games, and to make it even more enticing, it will contain all the DLC on the cart. This is a very welcome announcement, given Darkest Dungeon had several DLC expansions, and having all of them on one cart is awesome news, and truly makes this physical the definitive version. It does make me wonder though why other releases can't take a similar approach, and have all patches and DLC on the cart like Darkest Dungeon and Bard's Tale. I hope other future limited releases take a similar approach in future. This was also the year of the Easy Platinum. It's apparently leading more people to play their Vitas to get some easy trophies. I'm not a fan of this approach, where you can get a Platinum before you even finish the game, but if it keeps people playing their Vitas, which in turn helps sales and encourages developers to release more Vita games, then I guess that's fine with me. This year Vita sales were hitting all-time lows in Japan. It's been common for sales to be only 1,500 to 2,000 units a week, compared to the Switch where tens of thousands of Switches are sold every week in Japan, and sometimes over 100,000 a week. Vitas are only being produced in Asia right now, and the sales performance has taken a big nosedive since the Switch's release. which gives some context to Sony's announcement in September. In September, SIE Senior VP Hiroyuki Oda said in an interview, "In Japan we will manufacture the Vita until the end of 2019, and he also said that there were no plans for a Vita successor." This was the really painful news of the year. The Vita won't be produced anymore after 2019. Aside from the Dreamcast, I can't remember a big gaming system from one of the big manufacturers being discontinued without a successor being announced. Sony has said it multiple times, they are out of the handheld market, and even though it's nice to hope and think that the success of the Switch may change their mind, I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm just accepting that the Vita is Sony's last handheld. It's sad, but it also makes me angry at Sony, as a lot of the reason the Vita failed lies at their feet. It's also frustrating the way all the bad news came out this year. We all know the Vita was not as big a success as they wanted it to be, and we all knew the end would come eventually, but the drip feeding of bad news, first PS Plus for Vita cancelled, then the carts, and then the Vita production ending, is just a crappy way to have news rolled out to Vita fans. They could have given us all the bad news in one hit, and just got it out there, and then talked about the game still coming. It seems like they refuse to talk about the Vita at all unless it's to give us some bad news. We had some big games from big publishers this year, Secret of Mana from Square Enix, and the Persona dancing games from Atlus. All three games were only available digitally in the West, but it was nice to see the Vita still getting some love from the big players. I know a lot of people don't like buying games digitally, but I'm hoping the Persona dancing game sold well enough that hopefully Atlus will bring Catherine over to the Vita in the West. In September, Sony announced they would be following Nintendo and releasing the PS1 Classic. This was also a little annoying to Vita fans, because the PlayStation TV is a much better version of the PS Classic, with access to PS1 games on the store, PSP games, Vita games, and remote play of PS4 games. They discontinued this awesome little system, without even trying to make it a success, and then released this crappy product with a handful of good games. The PS TV has access to some PS1 games that you can't find on the PS Classics, true classic games like Symphony of the Night and Final Fantasy IX. Despite all the crappy news this year, there has been some good news for Vita fans in the games that have come out. Games like Reverie, Iconoclast, Rainbow Skies and Time Spinner have been excellent and have given us reasons to continue to play our Vitas. Stardew Valley's release was a nice surprise, and even though I wasn't a fan of the game, I'm glad for people that did enjoy it. This year was also a big one for me, as I released my book, The PlayStation Vita Year 1. After the successful Kickstarter in February, I ended up finishing and posting out the book in August. It was an awesome feeling to have it completed and to hold it in my hands, and I have to thank all of you guys for backing me again and supporting me. I'm already well underway with writing the follow-up, and I'll have more news to share on that in 2019. I've been doing these year-end summary videos for 3 years now, and each time I was pleasantly surprised that the Vita was still not just getting games, but getting lots of great games. I always expected that the next year would be the last year for the Vita, and I've been wrong twice before, but as we approach 2019, it really seems like this will be the final year in many ways for the Vita. I hope we'll still be getting games in 2020, but I guess that will depend on whether it's worth the time and money for developers to do so. You know what though? The Vita was first released in December 2011, and production is ending at the end of 2019. 8 years is a really good life for a game system. Other systems that have sold a lot more have had shorter lives. 2018 has been another good year for Vita games. I've been playing my Vita all year, and there are a lot of games I didn't get to. I'm looking forward to next year and to continue playing my Vita for years to come. So guys, what have been your highlights and disappointments of the year? Leave a comment below, and as always, thanks for watching.